The title of this episode is Drift. I recently heard this quote. It was actually an actor, and he was talking about how he and his partner, his business partner, who had these big dreams and aspirations that led to him becoming very wealthy, both of them, but his friend becoming even more wealthy. And he was the guy who supported and believed in him. And this person also had the aspiration to become the president of the United States. And things kind of fell apart at the end. And as they were, they came to this crossroads. Their friend said, "Hey, we've been here before. Let's start over." The other person declined. And he talked about that somewhere along the way, they lost their way, that they experienced what was called drift. And I can think about this in the context of my own life, in which little by little, I kind of lost my way. And fortunately, the practices brought, well, suffering brought me back brought me at the crossroads of the opportunity to begin to work on myself instead of trying to use the outside world to make me feel okay, for me to feel loved, for me to feel valued, for me to feel respected, you name it. Whatever I was using the outside world for, whether I was conscious of it or unconscious of it, I was using the outside world and it was not working because all it led to was maybe some temporary satisfaction, but long-term suffering. And what was happening is the more and more I was engaging in behavior that was not conducive to living a peaceful, service-oriented life, I suffered and I experienced drift. And I'll give some examples of that in just a second. But here's a quote that the actor said in this show: "Drift, a degree off on a compass heading on a long enough journey, you end up far from your destination. You end up lost." And that's what I think about. And we say it one more time: drift, a degree off on a compass heading on a long enough journey, you end up far from your destination. You end up lost. And that's exactly what happened to me. Is I started to complain just a little bit. And before a little bit more all the time, became more and more identified with my thoughts and my views, so much so that I started to separate myself from people who didn't think the way that I did, had the same political beliefs or values or whatever it was. And I became further and further away. And I started to spend more time with people that had similar beliefs. And what that did was it started to erect a wall between myself and other people. And I didn't know it at the time, but though that wall wasn't insulating me, it was becoming a limitation of me being exposed and benefiting from other views, from having the opportunity for other people to learn from other people and have them bless my life in ways that I didn't know were possible. And that's what's happening now because I've corrected the drift. But back then I didn't. And I see people do that a lot. And when you do that, when you have it, you experience this drift, there's this separateness that occurs with other people. Whether you judge people based on their weight, their ethnicity, what they're doing for a profession, their background, whatever the case is, when you do that, there's drift. It showed up in another way for me too. It was complaining little by little, as I mentioned before. It was also in the form of making other, distinctions between myself and other people regarding a good example would be in regarding what I think they value, most. Their commitment isn't quite what mine is. Or I don't like the way they put other people down. Like I would never do that. So this superiority thing that I had going on was also part of my drift. But all of it was leading to the same place. I was experiencing a disconnection from humanity. And for a guy now who wants to sprinkle kindness everywhere I go, it's not how I want to behave. So the practice that I do on a regular basis every day, I spend 15 minutes in the morning reading, doing a gratitude meditation, a little bit of exercise, listening to an inspiring podcast and talk, as well as connecting with friends who are have their own practice. And in doing so, I practice the principles throughout the day, especially when things come up that could lead to drift. I do that. Whether it's driving in my car and I see myself, upset about the driver in front of me. It's an opportunity to use my practice and let that go. To see the humanity in the person behind the wheel, regardless of how they're driving. At work, when I feel like people are treating me unfairly, well, I don't want to confuse their behavior, whether they are or not, because it could be subjective or it could be real. They are treating me unfairly. If that's the case, then I can separate the behavior from the human being. And in doing so, I can still stay connected to their humanity. And so, but in the past, I didn't do that. I just continue to experience drift. I see it with people that make big commitments about how they want to be physically fit and healthy. One goal for some people is to have a long lifespan. Well, I offer that if you eat in a very thoughtful way and you exercise and get your sleep, then you can increase your health span. That is the quality of the years you have to do what you want to do over your lifespan. But there's some people that experience drift. A little wine here, it turns into a little more wine, eating things that don't support a long, healthy health span is also an example of drift. And you see it, it shows up in different ways. It shows up around the waistline, it shows up in your movements or your diminishing mobility. But that's another example of drift. If you're a person who's anxious, and what you do is you start to stop experiencing things that you find challenging, then that's just an example of drift. Then you stop experiencing a lot of stuff because you're afraid of it, whether it's driving in a new city, traveling somewhere else, so a place that you've never been before because you're afraid of what could happen to you. That's drift. On the pickleball court, I noticed that I really felt most comfortable playing with the people that I knew I had experience playing with. So what did I make a commitment to do? Start playing with people that who I don't, know how they play, who are better than me, so that I don't experience this drift of one not wanting to be in situations that are uncomfortable. So I encourage you to really think about that. Are you experiencing drift in one or more areas of your life? And let me read it to you one more time, drift. A degree off a compass heading on a long enough journey, you end up far from your destination. You end up lost. My destination is to be joyful, to be open hearted, to be loving, to be peaceful and service oriented. I don't want to experience any drift away from that. So I'm choosing the path that takes me to that destination. I hope you'll do the same for whatever your destination is too.